I welcome all of you to the second day of the workshop. I think you benefited from the sessions yesterday. The resource person, Dr. Meena Ketan Behra, will focus on sampling, its different types, are the different stages of the field work. He will also shed light on various secondary and various primary and secondary data, and what are the methods of collecting primary data. So once again, I welcome all of you to this workshop, and I request all of you to park your queries in the chat box, and the ones who are connected through YouTube can send their queries through email IDs which were shared with them yesterday. I welcome Dr. Meena Ketan Behra to this workshop, and I thank you, Dr. Meena Ketan Behra, for agreeing to be with us this morning. Over to you, Dr. Behra, and I request you to make your presentation.
Yeah, so good morning, ma'am, dear friends. I think that today I will maybe within this 2 hours, so I will try my best to discuss sampling, which is very, very essential. Then I will share the second part, that how you will do your field survey in the field. Then the third part that I will discuss this about secondary data and what measures you have to take in. And the fourth one is how you will collect the primary data. So maybe it is very difficult to discuss all this part, but rather than giving lecture, I will try my best to provide some idea, some understanding. So within these 2 hours, so if you have any clarifications, so you will write to me. So yesterday I understand that I'm not able to answer many questions because of the time constraint. Okay, so but you write, I got some mail from the students, so I am in the process to whatever this information they required, I will share it. So now, without losing any time, I think I will share this first part. So within these two, one part that is sampling, which is the slide is very visible or not? Please just look at it. The slide is visible, please.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, okay. So my request is that so many times so many people, including teacher also, confuse between sampling and a sample. So my dear friends, so you tell those who are teacher here, please categorically, many times if you will ask your students, also including teachers, you will find, so they say when you ask sampling, they tell the definition of sample. So please believe me, so this sampling is very, very essential. So when you say sampling, remember one thing, there is a huge difference between sample and sampling. So when you say sampling, sampling is a tool, sampling is a technique, sampling is a method through which you will select a sample. Okay, so so please, so don't be confused. Suppose we have 100 students. Okay, out of 100 students, I want to select 20. So how you will select that 20? That is done by the method that is called as a sampling. So please, many times many students confusion on this part. So you clear on that. So sampling is a part of technique, method, tool through which you will select the required sample from the populations from which you will collect the information. Okay, so So nothing about if you go for, so how you will select, so in a layman sense, suppose if you want to 1000 population you have, how you will select 100 population, that is done by the sampling. And the 100 sample, each individual, each respondent called as a sample that will provide information from you. So remember one thing, so many times, so you just look at it, uh, that always a researcher, the first mind question comes that what is my sample size? Whether I will take 100, whether I will take 200, whether I will take 300, that always the students ask to the supervisor. Or then the second point, if you go for, so there are two types of sampling. One that we call as a, basically the technically term that we call as a sampling procedure. Okay, so if you go for that, there is a concept of probability sampling, and another one is a non-probability sampling. Please, I'm just summarizing. You just, I will explain each term detail. You just look at it. You know, so there is no explanations of, because you see, who, when you say population, many people confuse that the population means that we are talking about the census, that we people are the population. No. So on which, if you say populations, okay, so as for a researcher, population is defined as, okay, from which he or she will collect the information for his research work. Remember one thing, that is known as a population. You just look at the definition. I am not going for the detail of this definition, so you just try to understand in a general sense. And so if you go for, suppose I am studying on Kondh community, so Kondh is my tribal. I am studying the midday meal schemes, so school is my population. The primary based school is my population. I am working on health indicator of particularly in a particular area, so that maybe, so you will find that the Anganwadi workers, those who are providing benefit to beneficiary. So maybe many dimensions you just talk about, so that is your population. So who will provide your information, and from which on that basis you will draw your conclusion. So now if you go for sample means, so part of the population, you don't have time, you don't have cost, so you to cover all Kondh community, or the if you go for tribal community or scheduled tribe community. Okay, so you will select, so suppose Musahar community, you want to work on Musahar community in Bihar. Okay, so the scheduled caste community. So in that context, it is maybe you have you can take whole population, that called as a census. But if you go for it, you don't have cost, time, so maybe you will take off some part of that. That is called as a you sample. Okay, so why it is very, very essential, you just look at it. So I am not going, because there is always two things, that whether you are using, so what is your sample size, the main common questions that people ask. Then another question that you will find, that what is your sample method. Okay, whether you have choose probability sampling and non-probability sampling. You just read it, so I am not going for, I have already explained. You just why the sampling, so no need of explaining why, that is everyone knows that required is very, there are two methods. One is census method. Census method means you are collecting information from each and every individual of your population. Okay, if you are not using that information every and every individual, that is called as a sample. Okay, that is called as a you are this sampling method. Okay, part of that population. Okay, so you know this, so just look at this slide. So I am not going detail because time constraint. So I will share my own experience on that. You just look at it. So always this method that you have to follow. So you have to ask yourself whether you are using, just read this slide. Yeah. So look at this slide. So but there are two methods you will find. One is your, that we call as a probability method, another one is called as a non-probability method. Please look at it. Huh? So why we call as a probability method? You just look at the how you have to first you have to select the method, whether you are using. Many times many people do not know that if you ask the student what method you are selecting the sample, on which basis you have selected the sample, immediately answer was, sir, I am taking random sample. So if you ask the second question, what do you mean by random sample? No, sir, random sample means random. Okay, so that is not true. Please, those who are teacher here, those who are student here, please, you have to, because you see, if your sample selection is wrong, then the information you will collect, that will also wrong, and your whole analysis will be wrong. Okay, so in that context, so you have to very clear on the selection of sampling. That like if you go for like the economics, the marketing, all types of this quantitative, if you go for, so you will find where a sampling plays significant role. Okay, and if you, so I'm coming to that, so you just look at it. So you will find, just look at it, two things you will find. One is probability sampling, another one is a non-probability sampling. So probability sampling, if you go for probability sampling is that sampling, is that method in which and every individual from the population has a equal and independent chance to be a sample. Please look at it. Why it is called probability? Probability sampling is that sampling in which each and every individual has equal and independent chance to be a sample. Like I'm giving one example. Suppose a class of 20. Suppose in my this lecture, so suppose 100 people join in this class. Okay, so if you go for, so if I want to select out of 100, okay, so I want to select 20, okay, so that means 100 people in that population, my population is 100, and out of 100, every member, every participant has a, suppose I want to select 20. So that means every member has a chance to be a equal chance. First I use the term equal chance. So that is clear. So, okay. Second point is independence. What do you mean by independence? Now selection of one member will not affect the selection of other members. Most of the cases, you know, that we use, that suppose we make a cheat lottery method. Remember one thing, there is no personal bias in case of a probability method. Okay, you understand? Because you see, suppose you make a, I will explain detail on this. So this 100 cheat you make. So if you check, you want to, you just write down 100 names, and out of this 100 you want to select 20. So you do not know whom you will select. Okay, so there is no question of personal bias in case of that probability sampling. Okay, so you just please just try to understand these things. Then we'll go for this case. So similarly, if you go for non-probability sampling where, so you can choose, okay, anyone, okay, that is your choice, that is your freedom, that is your understanding. Okay, so that is called as a, so exactly non-probability is that sampling in which every individual has not equal and independent chance to be a sample. Okay, so you understand these are two. That means always there is a error in case of non-probability sampling. Always there is a bias in case of non-probability sampling. So okay, so most of the researcher, we use the technically term that I use purposive sampling. I will explain detail on this. You will have, if you have any clarification, you will ask me later. So you just look at it. So these are the, okay, so now you clear, understand use the probability and the non-probability sampling. Remember one thing, I am not at all speaking any mathematical language. I am only speaking the general language to understand the concept. Okay, so now you just look at these are, if you go for probability, within probability, the sampling, the method, so you will find simple random sampling, another one is the systematic random sampling, another one is the stratified random sampling, another one is the cluster sampling, another one is multi-stage sampling. Okay, so I will explain details of this. Okay, so if you have any clarification, please just look at this, just read the slide and just listen what I am speaking. Okay, and another one is, if you go for that, another one is non-probability sampling. So there broadly you will find that we call as a, so one is the convenience sampling, another one is that we call as a, technically we will call as a judgment sampling. Judgment sampling is otherwise called as a purposive sampling. Then another one is quota sampling, another one is snowball sampling. Remember one thing, so you will find throughout of your analysis, most of the technical term we use, that I have used random sampling, I have used purposive sampling. So remember one thing, so most of if you are why this plays significant role in terms of selecting the sample, because remember one thing, your respondent or your sample will provide the information for which you will find the answer to the question. Okay, so in that context, like suppose I maybe, so you just, I hope many students know all these things, and from the graduation level, or I hope from the intermediate level, those who have basic economics or statistics, you know. But we just summarizing these things. So don't expect that if you have any clarification, you will ask me, you write me. Okay, now simple random sampling. Only basic I will explain. If you go for simple random sampling, you remember the first condition. Simple random sampling you will apply only when your population is homogeneous. This is the first criteria. Please look at these conditions. Many teachers, many students do not know. Why? Heterogeneous means same nature, same feature, same characteristics. Okay, so if the whole population that you are studying, okay, if all are count, then you can take, so your sample of 20, 30, 40. Okay, if suppose like I am giving the one example, you just look at it. You want to find out what is the average salary of those who are working in a university. Okay, so now suppose if you are, okay, so university you will find professor, you will find associate professor, you will find assistant professor, and if you look at the salary also, there is also difference. And if you select the sample you want, your objective is to find out what is the average salary of the staff or professors working in Jawaharlal Nehru University. So if you by default, so you want to, you do a survey and you select all the sample. So suppose assistant professor. So in that sense, so if you find your 20 information, you add together and divided by 20. So you will find average. Suppose if your sample is only assistant professor, then your figure will be wrong. Your data analysis will be wrong. So in that sense, so there is, maybe I will explain detail on this. So so you have to be, when you say simple random sampling, so simple random sampling when all the populations of your study should be homogeneous. And there are two methods through which you can select. Just look at it. Simple random sampling, you know how. Now there is a concept of lottery method. What lottery method? Now you, whatever population you have, you just make the sheet of this and put in a box, and you randomly take whatever the sample you know. So everyone, I hope every student, those who are participating, know this lottery method. Another one is that another method is there. So that most of the students do not know, that we call as a if you go for that, we call as a random table number. Okay, so this is, that means you just know this is only for my teacher friend, those who are here. So it is random table if you go for broadly using the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. So these statisticians have developed a table that is already given. Every appendix of any statistics we pick up, so you will find random table. Remember, is now it is not used. Computer is doing all these things. Those who are commanding some mathematical equations are there. Okay, so you within that method, so you can determine the sample size. So remember one thing, just look at this slide. I am, because many students do not know, so how you will, this is very easy, nothing is there. So you just read it. Okay, so the suppose this is a table, random table is given. I have copy paste from the appendix of the book. Now you just look at it. Never read this first number. So that is 13,962. You just read at the 13962 70992 65172. So 28053. So if you go for like this, just look at it. This is a table given. So that table, suppose you want to select, just look at it. So this is a table. You have to first, you have to row wise, you just pick up this row. So this is a table that suppose you have taken 36802231. This is the table. So 48 household you have. 48 household, you have to select 2 or 3 household. So what you have to do? Now you have to do, so only you have to, what you have to do? Now only you have to make, because maximum 40 household you know, so you make the 2-digit number. Okay, so you make 2 number. So you see, now you make 36, 80. Please mute it, please. Okay, so please.
Participants are requested to mute themselves. There is some problem, please. All participants, I can, yes. Yes, please mute yourself. There is still one. Samuel, please mute yourself because of.
Okay, so yeah. So now. Okay, so if you go for, just look at this. So generally, so you have to select this, no need of, you just look at it. So then you make a 2222 number, and then at least, so if you want to select 2 numbers, so you have to select that, you have to row wise, you have to look which number. Suppose you see 36 is less than 48, so you will select this number, first number. If you select the second number 80, so this is more than 48, you would not select. So if this is 22, this is another number, so you will select that number. So whatever this, generally this is the use, and not no more now it is used, but at least you should understand what is the principle behind it. I am not going for detail on this. Now, second, if you go for systematic random sampling, remember one thing, this is applicable, the condition, first condition, just look at it. The first condition is that the population should be known. Okay, first condition. If you go for systematic random sampling, the first condition, the population should be known. You know beforehand the population, like suppose voter list, Anganwadi workers, BPL workers, sorry, BPL household. Okay, that list is there in every village. So first point, so the condition is that only when you apply systematic random sampling, when you know the population, total population you know beforehand. Then the second criteria, the first sample is selected randomly and the next sample selected at a equal interval. Okay, you just look at it, you can easily understand. You just look at it. So suppose I have 100 sample. Okay, so you know this 100 sample. So that list is there. Alphabetical fast 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That order is there. Okay, now so it says out of 100 you know the population. Now you want, suppose you want 20 sample. Okay, so very easy, nothing is there. So you want to select 20 sample. So what you have to do? Now you have to basically, so you know your total population, that is n. So now, so I say, so the first unit selected randomly and the next unit selected at equal interval. So how you will calculate that interval? Now you know the population and you know the required sample. So your total population is 100 and your total sample is 20. So you divided 100 by 20, you will find 5. Okay, so what you will do? Now you will select, suppose you select first unit 4. Then you, so after 5 units, selected 9. Then after 5 units, selected 14. Then after 5 units, selected 19. Then after 5 units, you selected 24. Remember one thing, that you have to remember that when the condition is that, so now this is that we call as a systematic random sampling, that many times we call as the interval. Okay, so equal interval. So another point you have to keep in mind, that the first unit selected to be, this point you have to remember. So the first unit should be selected that should be less than the number 5. Just look at the slide, yeah? Because if you select suppose 20, then you will not find the required number sample of 20. So the first unit should be less than, if you go for, that should be maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. Okay, so you choose, so basically the first unit should be less than or equal to the class interval. That number you find 5. That we call as a systematic random sampling. If you go for another one, if you go for that we call as a stratified random sampling. Most of this is one of the best, okay, in terms of probability sampling. Okay, now so you just look at the, what the third is, that now you clear. So simple random sampling, systematic random sampling. Now third one is you, that we call as a, if you go for stratified random sampling. Stratified random sampling means, so that you have to, when the condition, the first condition, you will apply stratified random sampling when your population is heterogeneous. Please, you have to keep the first condition is mandatory. If the population is heterogeneous, then only you have to make, so you have to apply your stratified random sampling. So now the first point. So your second point, you have to just look at this. You have first, your population is different color. So now this second, then you make a same color in a group. Okay, okay. Then from each group you are selecting the sample. You just look at this slide, that we call as the population, that you call as the strata. Another one is the sample. So the second step is that you have to make this heterogeneous group into homogeneous group on the basis of, okay, income, education, designation, age, sex, caste, religion. So that means on the basis of heterogeneous, now you have to make homogeneous. Okay, how you will make homogeneous? So homogeneous you have to make on the basis of, like you will make one group, so assistant professor, you will make another group of associate professor, you will make another group of professor. Okay, so like similarly you can group like caste, you will make one group scheduled caste, another group scheduled tribe, another group OBC, another group general. Okay, so like you have to, maybe you talk about male, female, and then third gender. Okay, so that you have to, similarly religion. So that means it is your researcher, your duty. So you have to, because this way, then you have to select a group, or that we call as a strata, on the basis of this parameter. And remember one thing, so whatever the characteristics, the nature, the features that you will find within this strata or group should be similar. Okay, and among the groups should be different. So that if you go for that, we just you that we call as a strata, that we call as a group. So always you have to keep in mind. So you have to make the group, you have to make the strata with same nature, same feature, same characteristics, okay, similar nature, and among the group you will find the different strata. So then from each strata, then from each group, you have to select the required sample. Suppose now many people that we call as a proportionate stratified sampling. Okay, proportionate means, suppose you just look at it. Suppose in a university you find there are 100 teachers. Okay, 100 professors. So now you find out of the 100 professors, suppose, so out of 100 professors, you find your assistant professor is 60, okay, then your associate professor is 20, then you if you go for, suppose, sorry, associate professor is 30, and your professor is 10, okay, so you have total, your header, you want to find out the average expenditure or average salary of the university professor in JNU. So you have 100 population, so 100 professor. So 100 population, out of the 100 if you go for, so you find 60 are assistant professor, and 20 are your associate professor, and if you go for, sorry, 30 are associate professor, and 10 are professor. Okay, so now if you want to select 10 sample from this, so how you will select? Now you will select 6 from the ratio, 6 is to 3 is to 1. Okay, so you will select 6 from the assistant professor, 3 from the associate professor, and 1 from the professor. So that we call as a proportionate. That means from each strata, from each group, you are selecting the sample with respective to their population. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that we call as a proportionate. Another one is non-proportionate, so I am not going for that. Okay, so this is that we call as a, if you go for, this is stratified random sampling. Okay, not so most of the cases, so you will use this method. Remember one thing, then I will, when I will finish this general idea, so if you go for another things, okay, now, so samples each other, you just, that would proportional, this proportional, so you just look at it. So I am not going for this. Okay, another one is that, remember one thing, so if you go for, so stratified random sampling is over. Now if you go for the cluster sampling, remember one thing, so if you are using cluster sampling, so means, so cluster means, on this, in cluster sampling, many people, if you go for that, most of the ethnographic study, Okay, you will find they are using this cluster methoding, because you see, if you go for, you will find, if you go for a rural area in a village, so you will find automatically, you will find SC community in one cluster, Brahmin community is one cluster. If you, I know that many people say that no sir, this is not valid, but my experience, if you go for Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, that I am working, so you will find general trend that all the Muslim in one cluster, all the SC in one cluster, or in a particular, whenever you enter in a village, so you will find that pattern is there. Maybe so many places it is not applicable, but you will find general too. Like this same, like you talk about Musahar community. Okay, so in that, when you say cluster sampling, so you divided the total on the basis of your geographical area. Suppose you want to work on a Delhi slums area. Okay, so so you, what, on the basis of, you divided total area into south, east, west, north. Okay, four part on the basis of geographical area, into four part you divided, and out of the four part, okay, so part one, part two, part three, part four. Okay, so on the basis of your geographical area. Okay, so then you select one geographical area, you select one cluster from that total area, and whatever the sample is there, so you will select as all as your sample. So this is that we call as a cluster sampling. Suppose you want on Kandh community, you want on Mankadia community, you want on Musahar community, you want on Lodha community. Okay, so on that basis, so basically, so different other factors. So you only on the basis of geographical factor, you have to divide that fact. So that we call as a first, you divided into four part, two part, three part, six part, and you select one part randomly, and then whatever sample is there, you will select for your as a respondent. That we call as a cluster sampling. Then another factor, if you go for, that we call as a multi-stage sampling. Please, multi-stage sampling, always if you go for, when your population is very large. Okay, so in that sense, you have to, multi-stage means stage by stage by stage. Okay, so I will explain, give you one example. When you say multi-stage sampling, okay, so that in that sampling, so you will find that, suppose you, if first condition, if your population is very large, like suppose you want to do a survey, what is the quality of midday meal schemes that is going in India. Okay, so suppose I, of ministry, assign you, you have to do a survey on midday meal schemes. So remember one thing. So you know, so okay, so it is very huge population everywhere. It is the midday meal scheme is going on. So how you will select, how you will conduct this study? So the first step, okay, so what you will do? Now you have to develop a criteria. You will develop a standard. You will develop a parameter. You will develop a indicator through which you will divide, like suppose we have these steps. Okay, so now you will apply one parameter. Okay, that I will select that state which is literacy is low. So you know state-wise literacy rate are available. So okay, so now the first stage, on the basis of the literacy, you, out of, suppose you find Bihar is the lowest literacy rate among these states. So out of the total states, so you randomly select on the basis of this parameter. So one stage is over. Stage is first stage. State selection is over on the basis of one parameter, established parameter, which the data is available, through which we can measure. Okay, we can apply throughout the any parameter that is your choice established. Now state is over. Now suppose in Bihar, so maybe 38 or 39 districts are, if you go for Bihar, that is also very big. It is not possible for me. So what I will do? Now I will, I proceed. Now I will select same parameter. Suppose I apply out of 38 or 39 district in Bihar. Okay, so you apply the same literacy rate. Suppose you find if you want district, okay, Madhubani suppose is low literacy rate, or any district you find Gaya is low literacy rate. Okay, so you have to, so out of 39 districts, on the basis of same indicator, you can change the indicator. That is your choice. Any other parameter, established parameter, you can use. Okay, you can select on the basis of the, so because your objective is to see the quality of midday meal scheme. So any parameter you apply. So you select one district. Second step is over. Now state selection is over. District selection is over. Now you will go for same criteria. You will select a block. Okay. So now, so like same literacy, you can block-wise literacy is also available. You apply that block level. Now, so now after that, so maybe, so now you can go to the block. After block, you can go for panchayat, or you can directly go to the school. Now block-wise list are there. Okay, so now then maybe in selection of the schools, so you can select that I will select those schools which are in the maybe parameter as you those who are either in the village rural area or outside the road. Okay, many criteria you can select. Then in terms of now school selection is over. Okay, now you select the respondent who will provide the information. The information will be provided by those who are eating the food. Okay, their parents, their teachers. Okay, so you have to randomly, maybe in that stage, you have to apply. Okay, so you will select one group from SC community, another group from OBC community, another group from general community. So then you take their view. When you say multi-stage sampling means stage by stage by stage. Okay, you will select the required sampling when your universe or population is large. So this is the general idea of your probability sampling. Remember the condition, in probability sampling, there is always less chance of personal bias. There is a less chance of your error. Okay, but so this is something about, I hope everyone knows, but you have to, many students ask that can I apply only? No, you can apply combination of these 5 if you are using. Maybe you can combine probability and non-probability sampling. I will come into this. Now this first part is over. The second part is many students, if you go for, like we call as a, that is non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling first is that we call as a convenience. That means on the basis of, basically when you say convenience, convenience to whom? Convenience to the researcher. Suppose I want to do a survey on midday meal. So I will select that there is a school in front of my home. So I can work there in my area. I go there. I can, because I have commanding on that. So suppose I want to do a survey in a particular small scale industry. There is a small scale industry is my own. Okay, so that the convenience means convenience to the researcher. Okay, so on that basis, the error is there. Okay, so that we call as a convenience sampling. Another sampling that we call as a, most of that we call as a purposive sampling. Many students use the technical term, if they whether they are using, okay, they immediately say that yes, that is one way you say purposive sampling, or another that same, that many students do not know that purposive sampling is same as a judgmental sampling. Judgment means on the basis of the researcher, the sample he or she is selecting is the best representative of the population. Okay, so that is that we call as a purposive sampling. Okay, purposive. Okay, intentionally I have taken, the researcher has taken. So the logic is that on the basis of the researcher judgment, that the sample he or she is selecting, okay, is the best representative of the population. That means whatever he or she is taking, this researcher, that okay, if I will select these people, they will give the information to us. Okay, another if you go for, so that is that we call as a purposive or judgmental sampling. Many students, so if nothing is there, so you can mean if you go for sociology student, if you go for anthropology student, okay. So most of the case study that if you go for, so you will find they are using this purposive sampling. They are using this judgment sampling. Another one that we call as a, this is if you go for, that we call as a quota sampling. Quota sampling means if you go for most of the cases, like if you go for the which party will win this election. Okay, so generally suppose you want to find out the political science students or researcher, you to know that in suppose in this election which party will win. So quota means you as a researcher, so you will define that, so total sample size is determined 100. So you will 100. So I say, I as a researcher, I tell to the field investigator that okay, now so we have to ask 100 people. Okay, out of the 100 people, so you have to ask 60 male, 30 female, and 10 children. Okay, now why it comes under this non-probability sampling? Now the field investigator's choice whom he will select and whom he will not select. Okay, but suppose I say, so I enter to a village, whoever finds, because I have to, as a field investigator, I have to ask, my boss is given assignment that you have to ask 60 male members. So whom I will get? Suppose I don't like you, so I will not ask you, I will not select you, so I will select another one. Okay, so that is choice of the field investigator, whom he will ask, whom he will not ask. But he has to, the quota is given that 60 male, 30 female, 10 children. So that is his or her choice, that field investigator choice, whom we will select, whom we will not select. That we call as a quota sampling. Another sampling that, remember one thing, this is now many, if you go for most of the cases, if you go for snowball sampling. Why it called snowball sampling? You know, so that we most of the maybe, so this sampling is used when it is very difficult to select the sample. Like suppose you want to do a survey on, suppose like sex worker, you want to survey on AIDS patient, you want to do a survey, okay, threat, okay, any, you want to do a survey who are drinking wine in a hostel. Okay, so these are where basically generally you will find this is very difficult to get this sample. Okay, so in that where social stigma is lies, so because you see no one will say that I am a sex worker, no one will say that I am a AIDS patient. Okay, so no one will say that I am drinking wine in the hostel. Okay, so in that context, so it is very difficult to use to select the sample. So what is the procedure? Now you will suppose I want to do a survey that who are drinking wine in the hostel. So but you have to identify one member randomly. So one member will take another two names. So you will go to the another two members list and ask them who are other taking. So you have to like, this is the networking. So 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to, so whatever the required sample you want, so you can get it. So this is generally the idea of your generally understanding of your snowball sampling. So many people nowadays I found in migration people are using snowball sampling. That is not correct. My own understanding, but maybe this depends upon the supervisor. Generally where it is difficult to select the sample, whenever social stigma is there, so you will use this snowball sampling. This is the general idea of overall if you go for this probability and non-probability sampling. Okay, now, so many within this, another students that many students, if you just look at it, so I am not going for these things, you just look at it. Yes, yes, yeah. Oh, this is not essential, Phoebe. I am just explaining these things. Okay, many people you ask these questions. This one just then I think I will summarize then after this. So the first everywhere you just look at the slide. Many people that say that all the points that I am not going to mention, that how I will select the sample. Okay, always if you know that generally my own understanding is that you just read this point, I am not explaining this point, that you will find in most of the cases, okay, if you are using any statistical model, okay, so if you are selecting 200 plus sample size, that is best representative of the population. That because if you are less than 200, you can apply any statistical application, statistical tool or modeling, but that is not that much of helpful for you. So in that context, I always suggest those who are using any statistical tool, it is better they should take this sample of 200 plus. Okay, you can take 200, 250, you can take 300, you can take 400. And this is the generally, and if suppose if you are doing ethnographic study and extensive study of qualitative information, if your sample size is small, so then that is okay, you can proceed that most of the sociologists, anthropologists, and all the case study you will find they are using on that. And many students ask these questions that, sir, why, whether I will take 300 sample size, my supervisor or faculty member is asking, why not 360? So you just basically politely tell to the teacher that my understanding that whatever the sample size I have taken is a best representative of the population, and with this 200 I can able to use all the statistical parameters that I have taken into account. Okay, and that is also fulfill the objective that I want to study. Okay, so you politely tell. So generally, this is the only way that at least all teachers you should not ask these questions. Okay, so this is my general understanding that we should not. If you are taking suppose, but you have to provide sufficient background. Generally, your understanding of the study. Okay, then if you go for another one thing, if your population is heterogeneous, then you have to take your more sample. Okay, so that will justify your and also if you go for your also the nature of respondent, many points are there, so I am not going for this. Then what extent, suppose if you in social science there is a concept that we use that generally we assume that 10% to 5% level of error we can accept, but in physical science that is not possible. Okay, so that decisions also if you go for, so these are the overall idea of generally we have to follow. So in case of Saleh, remember one thing. So now with this, so the first questions that we have to write in a synopsis, in the last class I explained that what is your sampling. So you categorically tell in your synopsis that I have used probability sampling for my research work. Okay, so in that I have used, remember one thing, many students ask me, can I use both? Yes, you can use. You have a right to, you can use one stage simple random sampling, in another sense you can use purposive sampling. Okay, so that is your choice. One stage you can use stratified, and another stage you can use simple random sampling. You can use purposive sampling. Okay, so this is that categorically you mentioned. So I have used stratified simple random sampling. I have used simple random multi-stage sampling, and my total sample size thumb rule, and there is a rule. So because of time constraint, there are mathematical methods are there to calculate the sample size. So I am not going for that. There are many methods are there through which you can calculate. There is a formula, you just look at it. Now the software is doing to do that. Whatever the sample you will select. So most of the economics, those who are strong in statistics, so they are using computer is doing everything. No need of worry. If you know any software, if you know Stata, if you know R, if you know SPSS, so that is sufficient for doing this case. But always my request is that you have to apply your common sense. Okay, so I think that this is my generally understanding of your many other things are there. So if you have any, I think I should stop here, and then we will discuss other things. Yeah. If you have other things, then otherwise we will proceed for this next lecture. Yeah. Yeah. So now I think some questions. If you have questions that you write, so I will explain each term. Those who are present here, please, you write personally my mail. So here another questions. Yes, yes, you can. Someone is asking. I have already explained. So you tell your, but remember one thing. Most of the students, you do not know that what sampling technique I have used. I have many experience when I am just students are presenting in front of RSC. Okay, so immediately if I ask that what is the sampling you are taking, and the response was that I am taking random. So, but please, yes, if you are using random, so you have to explain on which basis you have to select the sample. And also you have to, someone is asking in the chat box that yes, you can use any of this probability and non-probability, you can combine together, you can take. That is your choice. But it is your duty as a researcher, you have to satisfy, you have to explain, you have to deepen, okay, that yes, because of this point I have taken this sampling. So you have to justify, you have to, then only you can able to do these things. Okay, if you go for, like someone is given, what do you mean by, yes. So if you remember one thing, someone is asking, if you go for difference between quota sampling and stratified random sampling, remember many people ask these questions in the interview board. Please, you just remember one thing. If you go for, so why quota sampling is not comes under this stratified random sampling? Because if you remember that you have on the basis of the, suppose you gender, male, female, you children, on this first part you divided on the basis of the stratified random sampling. So if for quota sampling, some part you will find stratified on the basis of gender. But after when you are selecting the sample, that is choice of the investigator, whom he will ask or whom he will select and whom he will not select. That is her choice. Suppose I enter to a village, so I have to do select 20. So I do not find one person is not comfortable. So I will forget that person. Okay, so I will leave that person. So I will proceed the second person. I may be left second person. So whenever my sample stop, I will stop. So this is basically, so that means, but in case of quota sampling, from each category, you are selecting the proportionate of their sample. But in this case of quota sampling, that is not there. So that is the difference between quota sampling and stratified random sampling. Yes, if you go for the cluster sampling, I say categorically, cluster means the cluster, you see, basically I say that only some groups are in one cluster. In that cluster means geographical area. Stratified, I have already explained. So on the basis of, maybe you will find on the basis of caste, gender, group, professions, age, many things. But cluster, if you find, only that parameter is used, that we call as a geographical location. Okay, so geographically you divided different 2 part, 3 part, 4 part, 5 part, what may be. Then randomly you select one part, whatever the sample you have there, you can just share on this. Okay, now another is convenience sampling and purpose sampling. I already explained, Rajeshji. You see, generally, convenience means convenience to the researcher. Okay, so suppose the one school is there, one industry is there, so I near to my home, near to my locality, so I can approach them, I can select that on my basis of my convenience. But purpose is meaning is that researcher understanding. Suppose in a class I want to select 20, so it is my choice whom I will ask, whom I will not select. So basically that is the choice of the researcher on the basis of, this is used as a purpose. Purpose means it is basically, remember one thing, on the basis of the researcher understanding the sample that he and she is selecting is the best representative of the population. Okay, so try to understand, this is the generally understanding of the difference between purposive sampling and a convenience sampling. Yeah, any comments? Okay, so I think yeah, any other clarification? I think yeah, generally remember one thing that most you will find that one thing. So those who are, because many students do not know that what type of sampling he or she is applying for his research. Okay, so you have to, so one thing that many people confuse on the basis of the selection of sample, the statistical tools are there, but don't worry for that. You as a researcher, you decide yourself that whether the sample that I am selecting is useful to provide information for my research objective. Okay, so that is this sufficient for you to provide this information. Okay, so I think many other points are there, so I am not going for detail on this. If you have any clarification to like sampling errors are there, many issue points are there, so I am not going for that. But I think in future, if you have any clarification, anything, any help, I am ready to do that. So maybe I will take 2-3 minutes break. Then we will come for my own experience on this another topic that that we this primary data and secondary data and the field survey application that you have to taken care of that. So if you have any questions that you write me, Manorama ma'am. So if anything you want to ask, if you have any other, please explain. Multi-stage sampling. Okay, Ravi ji, you just look at it. Multi-stage sampling, the first criteria is that this sample is if your sample size is very large, then only you will apply multi-stage sampling. And multi-stage sampling means stage by, you first stage select states, district, block, panchayat, village, each stage by stage on the basis of certain parameter. That means on one indicator, one variable you will apply throughout state, throughout district. That is available and established fact. Then only you can do this. Otherwise, you will not able to use this case of multi-stage sampling. Here you have to decide. You and your supervisor has to decide on which basis you have to, how you make a stage. Okay, you will proceed from one stage to another stage to minimize your sample size. That is that you have to decide. Okay, use probability and non. You see, that is not. If you go for research, that is yours. I say I always suggest those who are working in a quantitative technique, quantitative research. Always please use probability sampling. Otherwise, if you are using non-probability sampling, there is a possibility of errors are there. So and also it is difficult to use this statistical tool in case of non-probability sampling. You can use, but most of the cases I always, if you talk about marketing, you talk about economics, you talk about modeling, anything, but most of the, if you go for these students of anthropology, sociology, now they are also using this case study, suppose this non-probability sampling. So that is not an hard and fast rule. So most of the, you can use also this, suppose I am working on Makaria tribe, I am working on Lodha tribe. So I say that it is a case study that I am using purposive sampling. That's all. So that is not the issue, that it is your choice. It is your choice, Sahaji, Tulip Kumar Saha. So you just any point that you can explain on this. Okay, any point, please. Rajesh, garam pani lao. Acha. So remember selecting sample size. Yes, I say, I already I explained the, you see sample size. Now it is on the basis of your, I say, if you are using any statistical tool, any econometrics model, my suggestion is that the thumb rule is that you have to use sample size at least 200 plus. Then it will be, maybe you are using any model, so it is sufficient to establish this fact. And also you have to decide whether the population is heterogeneous, homogeneous, literacy, the error factor. You want to decide whether that is sufficient on that. You have to decide. Many factors are there. So you have to, you as a researcher, you have to establish this mandatory. What are the mandatory parameters? Yes, that is your choice. Everything, remember one thing, whether this the tool that you will using, any econometrics tool are using, or if suppose it is homogeneous, if you are taking large homogeneous con community, suppose I am working on taking 1000, because they are same nature, same feature, same characteristics. What is the use of taking 100 sample size? Useless. Okay, so you have to, you as a researcher, so you have to decide yourself what is your objective, what is your methodology, what in what context you can explain this point. Okay, so you have to explain that things. In which process provides sampling a researcher able to minimize error in quantitative research? You see many points. Yeah, the next slide. Maybe if possible, I will share this PPT. Okay, many points are there. So first of all, you have to, many times there are two types of error. You know, sampling error, and you know that maybe the information is not there. So people are not providing the information. So whatever the information, that different types of information, if you go for, just look at it. I hope, yes, yeah. Yeah, so you just look at the slide. So all these errors that you have to take care of whenever you are doing, just look at the slide. Yeah. So I'm not going for detail. You as a researcher, you will find all these errors are there. So in that error, you have to take care of all these points to minimize this error in quantitative research. Broadly, your methodology should be clear. Your sampling should be clear on that when you are selecting this any quantitative research, in particularly in case of selecting the sample. If your selection is sample is the same, then you automatically it will be wrong. Yes, many tools now you see whether you are, I say different softwares are there. So on the basis whether you are on the basis which basis you are using, whether correlation, regression, t-test, z-test, chi-square test, Tobit model, Probit model, any models or anything you are using. So now the software is doing, but you at least you should know the background of the basis through which you can calculate or any parameter you are using. Otherwise, this is not, because many times I found that most of the students, they are using, but they do not know what is the basic for that. Okay, so they are using the factor analysis, but they do not know. They are using t-test, but they do not know what is the logic behind that. And immediately they will say that my supervisor has informed me these things you have to apply. So that is your choice. थोड़ा गर्म पानी ज्यादा कर लो। हाँ नहीं, और थोड़ा मेरे पीने के लिए कोई बात, बोतल है? बोतल है ना, ये बोलो पानी नहीं है, मैं छोड़ के कल चला जाता, ये वाला प्लीज। हाँ या इसमें सब भर। Any questions or Manorama?
Do we have questions? Regarding
I do not know in other source whether there are questions or not. If you have other questions, that I hope whatever the questions that they have written, I have already explained. So then otherwise I can proceed for the second thing.
Sir, please proceed ahead. If our participants have queries, we will entertain them after your presentation.
Okay. Okay. So now, remember one thing. So yes, stop this one. Okay. So now remember one thing. If you go for, then I think that I will combine these things. Okay, I am first coming to this second data. No. Just look at it, please. This slide is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now within this, maybe I'm not. I will not go for this. Remember one thing. This is very, very essential. Okay. So now, so we will discuss two things within this time period. We will discuss one is the primary survey and primary data and secondary data. In the last class, I said that I will use in your synopsis that I will use both primary data and secondary data for my research work. So you have to remember one thing. So on suppose I am working on tribes, I am working on education, I am working on health. So you as a researcher, you have to try your level best. What are the different secondary source through which I will get secondary information, the topic I am working. Okay, so you have to broadly remember one thing. So it is very, very essential. Okay, so I will combine this information, just look at it. So you will use, generally we use two things that I am using primary data and I am using secondary data. Okay, so I hope those who are, I do not know, if you go for this JNU, okay, JNU library, there is a data source everywhere. You go to the UGC, you go to the ICCR, you go to the JNU, or many places, you will find that it is your duty as a researcher. You have to first step that where you will get the secondary literature for your research work. Please, you have to write as much as possible. I maybe I will share. Remember one thing. So yesterday someone is asking that what is secondary data. So first of all, you have to now define what do you mean by secondary data. what do you mean by primary data? I always say to my researcher, those who are working here, that at least you have to do some field component to understand the ground reality. So it is also my request to everyone, those who are present, those who are students and those who are teachers, you may work 90% on the secondary literature, but my request to everyone, at least one chapter, some sample, you do a field survey. Or whatever the secondary literature exists, whether that is true or not, in what extent that is valid, so you have to do a field survey. Because remember one thing, field survey will give you a good understanding to understand the ground reality. So this is the first point that you have to take care of yourself. Second point, now you have to come, I say, that's what we mean by secondary data. Secondary data means that is not first-hand data. That means that is already collected by the other researcher, and you are using that data for your research work. Please clear on that. Okay, like suppose if you are first time, whatever information you are collecting from the field and you are using it, that is your primary data. So if you go for, so you no need of, so this is the difference between primary data and secondary data. Okay, so many secondary sources are available through which you can collect the data. Okay, so remember one thing that we call as a secondary data and a primary data. And your synopsis will clearly mention that I have used both primary and secondary data. If you are not using any primary data, sorry, so no need you use that I have used the secondary data from NSSO, from unit level data, or anything you can write, so that is not a hard and fast rule. But if you are doing field survey, so you have to use both primary and secondary data. Now gone. So secondary data, if you go for, if you, this point, remember one thing, always when you are secondary data using, so you have to be very careful that when you are using the secondary data research work. So suppose you have to first, as a researcher, you have to ask yourself that this is my objective of my study, whether if this objective is able to fulfill with the help of the secondary data, whether availability of data is there in this secondary literature through which I will able to fulfill that thing. So the first point, you have to, if you are working on secondary data, so you have to be clear on that. Okay, suppose on what dimensions that whether suppose you are working on domestic violence during COVID-19, so maybe you will not find that much secondary data in this literature. Okay, so you will find some micro level. So you have to proceed for the field survey. Then only you can find. So you have to this point. You have to take care of it. Please, please. Okay. So now,
मैडम इसी तरह ऑडिट कई बार लगे तो 4 साल बाद फिर दिक्कत होगी ना जी।
ma'am, silence please. Then if you go for the another dimension, that if you go for this, that we call as a reliability. Whatever the data you are available in the market, whatever the data in the literature, is that reliable from the reliable sources. Okay, so what is their methodology? Okay, so you have to, you as a researcher, so remember those who are using this secondary data, so you have to very clear on that dimension. Otherwise, you will face lots of problems. Okay, okay, so that and if you go for, is the data is accurate, whether that will fulfill the research questions, the research objective, the hypothesis, that I have formulated, that you have to ask yourself, okay, whether that data is sufficient, okay, so to fulfill all my objectives. So all these points, so you have to, when you are using maybe like if you go data are outdated, that is not relevant, that methodology is wrong, that is not correct, okay, not authentic. So you as a researcher, it is your duty that you have to explain each term and each factor when you are using secondary literature for your research work. I hope it is if you are using, so you have to be careful all these points that I have already explained. Now remember one thing, so you just now, if you go for, so if you go for these secondary data sources, there is a internal record. Internal means suppose you are working on a particular company. Okay, so in that particular company, that internal audit, there are different parameter, different indicator, different data source is available in that data particular company. Okay, or particular agency. Okay, so this if you go for, then if you go for external, that is already published in public domain in electronic format or in a printing. You talk about government, you just if you go for RBI, so many, if you go for many reports in Economy Survey of India, okay, then you go to the planning commission, okay, you will find plenty of books, plenty of reports, okay, everywhere different ministry there is a concept of annual report, and all this you just look at it, you will find use electronic data source are available. I am in the, you just log into the ICCR, there is a database server, you have to log in, and sufficient data source on different aspects you will get to it. Okay, so different ministry you will find different data source on that. Okay, so now it is very easy to collect the information from the secondary source. In our time it was difficult, but now, so within one click you will find plenty of information. So you have books, you have periodicals, you have journals, you have newspaper. So every information you will find one click, all the editorial of Hindu, all the editorial of Times of India, all the editorial of Indian Express. Okay, so you as a researcher, you have to open up, you just explore as much as possible, you just look at this website that I have given, you know this Shodh Gangotri, Shodh Ganga, okay, there are different theses are available, you can just look at it, how the thesis is written on that. This I think SCI have, that is, I hope this is not now, this from last week, it is not working, but you have to check all the journals. If you have this ULR, so you just click the journals and you will find all the journals in that. Then also if you go for this PDF drive, thousands of books are available free of cost, you can download as much as books you have. Then also if you go for, now maybe I do not know whether it is working or not, Jane Live, that is also books that you will find, thousands of books are available. Similarly, you can go for RBI. Similarly, you can go to the ICCR. Many secondary sources are available through which you can collect the data. So at least at present context, you research, so plenty of opportunity are there. You can explore different dimensions on this for collecting the secondary data. So please visit to all the websites. Oh, okay, so if every university now the journals are online available, no need of you just to go to the other library. Online you can access, many things are there. I hope maybe if you have any clarification, you ask Manorama Mamam to explain all this the secondary literature in our JNU library, whatever the available, she will explain to you. Okay, so on that point, maybe, so I have already explained this point. Now availability, relevancy, reliability, comparability, whether you can compare or not. The secondary data, that whatever you have taken, whether you will be able to compare it or not. That you have to taking care of this. Now, if you go for, so you have to Now this is something about your secondary data. Now if you go for if you go for your primary data, please silence, please. Okay. So if you go for primary data, okay, so primary data means, so that we call as a hand data. So the researcher himself, herself, go to the soil and collect the data and present the data and analyze the data and use for his research or her research work. Okay, so that we call as a primary data. So you have to work on that. So I always suggest that you see. So if you go to the primary data, at least you can understand the ground reality. You can supplement. Okay, so these are all types of. Now we will go for your understanding of this. The advantages. I am not going for this. Easy cost, low cost. You have difficulty in conducting primary survey. These are the basic things. I am not going for this. Now. So if you go for this one is very, very essential. I will try my best to explain. Okay. So you just now how you will collect primary data. Okay. So you maybe there is each chapter if you are reading any book. So I will only summarize whatever my own understanding is there. I will in order to, so now you understand the basic of the secondary data. Now we will go to the second part, that how you will collect. This is very, very essential. Please just look at it, how you will collect the primary data from the field. Okay, so if you go for, so broadly you will find that how you will create the primary data. Now you will create the primary data through observations. Yesterday we have already developed the questionnaire and the schedule. So okay, so now these are you can collect the primary data, you can generate the primary data through observations, through focus group discussion, that we call as a PRA, participatory rural appraisal, RRA, rapid rural appraisal. Okay, then you can go for the experiment. Okay, we are not talking about physical experiment. Those who are psychology, I will explain this point. Okay, then you can use your field note, then you can use surveys, then you can use your case study. Okay, so these are the different methods. Many other methods are there. This is not hard and fast method, but you have to. So now, so we will explain. So each term through which generally some understanding of your primary data generation. You can collect primary data from the field. Okay. So now, if you go for, if you go for the survey, okay. So through survey, you can understand the behavior, you can know the opinion, you can know the attitude, you can know the beliefs, you can understand the fact. Okay, so if you are doing a survey, you just look at it, you just read the slide. I am not going for this. Okay, so through which you can able to do a survey. If you go for survey, so remember one thing, that what do you mean by the direct administrated sessions to a group. Basically, remember one thing, you have some set of questions. Okay, you have, if you go for, you have, so what you do, now survey, these are the through which you can do a survey. You can do a mail survey, you can go for personal interview, you can go for telephonic interview. Okay, if you go for the direct, means you are managing, you are controlling. Like suppose I as a supervisor, so you develop, it is not, you are not sending through mail, you are not doing interview. So what you are doing, now you want to do a survey what is the science infrastructure available in the particular school. So otherwise, what is the any survey you want to do a survey. So what you will do now, you will go to the school and you will hand over the question to the teacher and request the teacher, please circulate to your students, and the students will provide their feedback, and I am here within 1 year, sorry, 1 hour or 2 hours, I will collect the questionnaire. Means with you are there, but you are not asking, but you are handling, you are managing, you are controlling. Okay, so whenever they provide the information, you will collect and you will take away. So that is basically that we call as a, so you just look at the technical term that we call as a direct administration to a group. Okay, any study you want to do a, so everyone knows that so you have some set of questions and you are doing, you are managing. So because of that, we call as a this direct, you are controlling, you are managing. Second aspect, if you go for the second fact, that yesterday I have already explained. So you have to, that you are you have a question, you just now you have to mail that question to all the respondents. Okay, you want to do a survey. Okay, so yesterday I already explained the points that you have to mention. Remember one thing, so the only fact that you have to be many, so if you read each chapter, there is a separate chapter in each that you are talking about. So, but you have to very clear on that. You have positive point, you have negative point, on every merit and demerit are there. So I am not going for this, but my only concern is that when you are sending mail, so the response rate is very clear. So very poor. So you have to take it into mind. And also many times, so the questions that you are formulating, so in that questionnaire, so whom you are sending, whether he or she is able to understand the questionnaire, so it is your duty that you have to, and also many blank answer, that question is not answered, you will find. So how you will interpret, how will you analyze. So in that context, in order to avoid all these things, so if you are selecting 100 sample, so you have to at least take 500 people. Then I hope the required sample you will get. So many points and many limitations are there. You are not going for this. And remember one thing, this mail survey, all the marketing research, if you are doing a huge survey, okay, so you are using this mail survey. It is the best method and cost effective, and though response rate is poor, but you can handle it. Okay, so if there is a large survey on that, and telephone survey, so also that now this is very not that much. If you go for most of the people that marketing research, if you find that telephone survey, the method they are using and they are adapting, so you have to take the time, you have the appointment, then you have some different format questions that you will proceed for this. Then if you go for, like, just look at it. So if survey method, you just look at it, different survey methods are daily, but telephones, personal, home, mail, all the parameters that you are here. So now computer is doing, and now in mobile also you have getting the response, mail, telephone, many different and computer generated response are there. Okay, so now different other techniques are developed to do for this survey. So I'm not going for these things. So I have already explained in the last class that you have to very care for when you are doing a survey method. You have to ID your population, your sampling, your question, your content, your bias, and your cost, administrative cost, time, equipment. Everything should be properly, you have to ready for when you are doing a survey. Okay, so remember one thing, another point that if you go for, okay, so you just look at it, this I'm not going up, I have already explained this point, that when you are doing a survey, the positive point, you have to consider all these points. You just read this slide. I'm not going for this, but remember one thing, I always say that when you are doing a survey, that means you are using questionnaire and sending to the respondent, and respondent will provide that information. So that each, so that you have to, that suppose I remember I got a mail from one of my colleagues, and she prepared the questions of nearly more than if you go for 121 questions. Okay, remember one thing. So though by compulsion I have given the answer, but this is not the right way. That you should not ask 120 questions to a researcher. No one has time to give you 1 hour more than that to, and at least people should understand. Okay, your language, your sentence, whatever you are writing, then only you will provide whatever. So you just look at this. You have to. I have already explained. So this point you have to very careful on that doing survey. Okay, so this another now this another, if you go for within that, or if you go for, so another method that we call through which survey you can collect the primary data. Then you different procedures are there. So you collect, you arrange, and the entry, then you analyze, then interpret. All these things are there. Then another way of doing, if you go for, this is one of the, if you go for observation method, you researcher himself, herself observe the situations, observe the events, observe the people, okay, to understand the ground reality. Okay, so if you go for, you just look at it. Okay, so you will provide all, like suppose you want to, what is happening, whether people are obeying the traffic rules or not, traffic pattern, land use pattern, quality of housing, conditions of road, conditions of building, many things. If you go for how this health functionary is working in rural area or urban area. So you as a researcher, or you want to that you understand the situations. So these are, if you go for, so within this that we call as the observation method. So because if you go for most of the cases, I share my, during my PhD. Suppose I am working on particular tribe community, and I want to understand their culture, their religious, their behavior, okay, their cultural ceremony, their social ceremony, their marriage system. Okay, so I go there, I stay with them, and I try to observe everything, how they are functioning. Okay, so in that context, so you will find, you are the two things you have to keep in mind when you are doing a observation method. One is that we called as a participant observation method. Another one is a non-participant observation method. Okay, so you want to manage system of a tribal community. So you go there, you participate in their activity, and you try to understand their situation. And similarly, you do not participate in the situations, and you observe the. So what you as a researcher, so it is your duty. So what is your objective? What you want to observe? What you want to collect? So you have to very clear before when you are observing any individual. Okay, so you have to very care. So you just look at it whether you are observing. So when you are talking about participant, means you as a researcher, you are participating in that activity. And similarly, if you are not participating, okay, so that the observer is in that situation is not, do not know whether you are observing or not. Okay, so you have to very, so there are two methods are there, so you can go for the detail on this. So this is the one method where, so it is very difficult, like you say, where you will use this method. Suppose I say, anyone, if you will tell whether you are obeying traffic rules or not. Okay, immediately you say, yes, I obey. I do not disobey. I do not cross the red cross, particularly for signal, red light. But if you are there, you know your friend is going, you are in the particular area and the traffic post, you can understand whether what the respondent is telling truth or not. Okay, many limitations are there, personal bias are there, maybe personal understanding are there, and maybe your missing informations are there. Okay, so you have to, you as a researcher, okay, so main purpose of using that, so whether Okay, so if the in situations where respondent is hesitate, or maybe whether he or she is providing the current information, that in order to, so we use observation method. Basically, if you go for like the child psychology, the psychology people, most of the cases, and the ethnographic studies, this human behavior. Okay, so these people mostly use the observation method as a tool to understand this ground reality. Okay, this is the one method through which you can do basically qualitative information. Okay, not that much quantitative information. Broadly, you will find most if you are doing a survey, interview, or in a personal interview. I will explain to this point. So these are the cases that you have to find in mind. So I am not going, just look at it, the slide that Uh, so this positive point of this method, you just look at it, you will collect the original data. So maybe you can capture this whole event in the natural environment. Okay, so how they are behaving. Okay, what is their attitude? Suppose you want to a traffic signal person, or a particularly a pizza boy working in a McDonald particular outlet. Okay, so you have to, so many, so if you go for, so in that case you can use your tool that maybe the next slide I will explain mechanical device. Now you can record everything. Okay, so you have to be careful on these advantages and limitation. You very, this is not that much, you can not very slow and very expensive, and also very difficult to collect the information, and also maybe depending on the attitude, and maybe if he is known that he you are observing, then the actual attitude may be changed. Okay, and it is not very helpful to observe the past studies. Okay, many limitations are there, so you will not able to this understand this within this observation method. So broadly, you as a researcher, so it is your duty how you, this is a one method through which you can collect the data, your primary data for your research work. Another that interview method, most of the cases, most of the researcher, we broadly follow this that we call as a interview method. So, and this is a very practical method most of the cases. Okay, so we, with this set of questions after your pilot survey, so you are going to field, and you are the researcher, you are asking to the respondent, and respondent is providing information. If you have any doubt of the respondent facing in answering that questions, so you will provide that information. Any clarification, any understanding, okay, so you will, so that we call as a, so if this is the individual, if remember one thing, that is the, I maybe I will come to this second point. So that is a face-to-face interview. Okay, researcher and respondent, they are talking each other, so that we call as a, that we, if you go for, this is one of the best method, and we always follow as a researcher doing, if you are doing field survey. Okay, so if you, there is also, if you go for that, there is always, remember one thing, that you, many other points are there, so you just look at it. Because of the time shortage, I am explaining. So in the interview, okay, so you as a researcher, so there is a unstructured interview and a structured interview. Okay, so if you go for, you just look at the slide and read the point. Okay, so if you are, remember one thing, when you are talking about structured interview, okay, and there is a unstructured interview. So remember one thing, when you say, that means, so you predefine, you have some set of questions. I will ask your name, your father's name, your mother's name, your family members, your educational qualification, your employment, your salary, your land holding, your monthly income, monthly expenditure, many points only. So you have to structure step by step. I will first one question, second question, third question, fourth question. So structured manner. So most of these, I always, maybe I'll come to this point. And when you say unstructured, means you maybe So in a informal, maybe so the question order is not there. So whatever informal way, so the question is not structured, but you as a researcher, you know, okay, so which questions you have to ask, what type of information you will collect. So maybe you can change the order, whatever. Suppose you go, you informally first, so you know your objective, what information you want to collect. So you not in the order format. So whatever the information that you have related to your objective, you can add other dimensions also. So in that concept, so the question is not in a proper order that you have to follow this pattern only. No. So you have flexible, whatever way. So you as a researcher, you know when you are going to field, how you will interact to this. Okay. So basically, so there is two way through which that we call as a structured interview. Another way is the unstructured interview. My own experience is that if you go to the field, that in that case, so it is better that if you show your 20 pages questionnaire to a person, maybe he or she hesitate to provide the information. But you know, it is better you just first informally discuss with the person, and then whatever the questions that you have in a plain of paper or in your field diary, you try to write that information, because you have developed that questionnaire. You know whatever the questions that you have. Okay, you know your objective of your study. So it is better. Some situations are there, you can directly use the schedule. But some situations are there, people hesitate after looking at this large bundle of papers. So in that cases, you just use your field diary. Okay, so these that we call as a, so these are the main points that you have to take care of this point. So you just look at it, because you in case of questionnaire, there is a possibility that no one there to provide feedback. But you as a researcher is in the field, and there is a face-to-face of interview. So whatever the doubt the respondent will face, so you will able to answer that questions. That is very one of the positive point on that. Similarly, you just look at your response rate is very poor, sorry, very high. Like response rate is very poor in a questionnaire, but in schedule you will find that whatever the response rate is very poor. And also you can, so in-depth understanding of the questions, so you can, okay, you can understand the motive, you can understand the feeling, so you can also, you can record it, you can with the permission and all this tone of voice, the expressions, the hesitations, every point you can understand through the personal interview. And so broadly, if you go for that, many limitations are there. So you just look at it in terms of time, in terms of cost, in terms of arrangement. So many questions are there, and also not like the personal information. It is very difficult to provide into face to face. Okay, so you have to, in terms of, so you know, if you are asked a personal question, maybe the respondent hesitate to answer that question. So, but there are different techniques are there, so you can use that technique to understand. And there is also training and research training for the field investigator if they are going to field. So this is something that we have to call as a your personal interview. And most of the cases you have to follow this case. This is through which, and most of the researchers, at least we should, you are using this method for collection of primary data. Second, and this is very essential, that we call as a focus group discussion. Remember one thing, when you say focus group discussions, this is another method of collecting your primary data. And it is nowadays, it is a very relevant for your research work. Remember one thing, those students who are doing a field work, so you have to basically, at least if you, at least 2, 3, 4, 5, you have to do a focus group discussion. There is, if you go for any research methods group, you will find a chapter on focus group discussion. But I just will summarize with my own understanding of the focus group discussions. Okay, so my all the researchers, that if you go for what do you mean by focus group interview. So maybe suppose I am giving that some specific issue. Researcher, okay, in focus group, what is focus group? from what you will get from the focus group. In focus group, you just read that. You can understand the participant feeling, perception, action, attitude, motivation. Okay, you just look at it. This is very, very essential. Most of the best results from the field it will provide from the focus group discussions. Why? Because there are different stakeholders. So what actually focus group is this? Try to understand. In personal interview, face-to-face interview, one respondent and one researcher. Here, so what is the situation? Now you try to understand. Suppose you want to do a survey, actually why the quality of primary education in a rural area is not functioning well. In sense that the quality of teaching is poor. Now you do a survey. Okay, so now who will be respondent? Now respondent will be who? Who? Now different stakeholder. Who a stakeholder? First stakeholder. You talk about the school teacher. You talk about the second respondent. You talk about the senior most person in that old age person on that particular village. Then you talk about local level NGO, they are working in that area. Third, fourth, you can talk about the block level officer who are working there. Okay, so maybe those are who are directly actually they have some understanding about the activity that is going in that area. So you just so when focus group, so those people, so generally in focus group, 8 to 10 people, you will select from the activity, they have some understanding, they have some knowledge on that situation. So you conduct a meeting on that. So you as a researcher, what you will do? You just raise the question. You only act as a moderator. You will act as a only question raise. You just raise the questions and all the participants, they will give each member, those who are participating in these discussions, they will give their views, their understanding. So they will definitely say, one people will say, one section, that okay, teacher is busy with the different activity for collecting the grocery, the different surveys, so they are not coming to the school. The block level officer, those who are the educational officer, so they will say another aspect. The Gram Pradhan will say another aspect. So you as a researcher, you will listen all their points, and you write down. What you have to do, you analyze. You just write down whatever each member of the point they are telling, and then after you just look at it. So you just look at it. So I will coming to this point. So then you just analyze after the meeting is over. You take the understanding what they are discussing, what their point is coming. So you just look at it. So focus group, what, where, who, how. So these are these many points you will find. So and also the conditions are there. So you as a researcher, so it is very, very essential when you are doing a field survey. So you will get, whenever you are doing personal interview, many points you are not getting. But when you are doing a focus group discussion, that will provide the ground reality, the ground problem you can understand. Okay, so this is that we call as you just look at the slide. I'm not reading. It is your duty. You read every book. You will find that things. And one point that I will explain, that when you are selecting these 8 members or 10 members, and their nature, their character, they should be same category. Remember one thing. Suppose if you are working on a caste discrimination, okay, so you are doing a whether in rural area caste discrimination is there or not. So if immediately if you call a general Brahmin in that group, definitely they will say that okay, so no, there is no caste in our society. in your area. But it is your duty that in that case, who are the stakeholder, you have to decide from this their same background. Okay, you have to make another view from this upper caste. Okay, then you can compare, you as a researcher, then you can understand. So because of that, we call as, otherwise always you will find if the grandfather is there and you are telling this opinion, definitely so people will not raise their voice in the rural area. So you as a researcher, you should be clear, you should be focused on every aspect when you are doing a field survey. Okay, so many points are there. I am coming to this point. So that is nowadays, if you go for, so this focus group discussion is play a significant role to provide this information. And most of the study nowadays, they are conducting focus group discussion. You talk about different program that is implemented at the field, what is their challenges, why education is not developed, why health sector is facing this problem, why there is a Naxalite movement. So many points that you in social science research that are explored. So you can explore, you can conduct this equation. And also you can conduct any program is implemented, what is the achievement of that program before, after, okay, so or during. So you have to answer. This is a very important tool through which you can collect your focus group discussion. So many points are there. I am not going for this. Many points. So there is a recording, there is a moderator, those who are questions, facility, many points are there. So you just look at this. We have already explained. So you have to, and durations, you have to homogeneous respondent, I have already explained, and a formal atmosphere, natural environment, so that you can explain. Okay, so you just look at it at the beginning of the focus group. So you should welcome to the participant, what you should explain the purpose of the doing focus group, and you mention this ethical issue. Then also you allow that whatever discussion is going on that we are recording, and all that everyone, and that it is you as a researcher, it is your duty that you should provide every participant to speak. Okay, and their response should be taken into consideration. Whatever, whether, and it is not your duty. You ask the question and you never interfere in that discussion. Whatever they are telling, so you have to write, you have to record it, then you have to analyze. So these are these cases. This focus group discussion is there. Then I am moving very fast. So now this one is that participatory this rural appraisal. So now it is if you go for the meaning is that if you go for participatory rural appraisal, you will find that most of the cases now the many people that we say that if you go for rural area, so they people they will tell you that what is their problem. They will tell you also the solutions. Okay, so what they need, what is their requirement. Okay, so many times the problem lies that I am sharing one experience that many times that like whatever the program that we are implementing at the ground, we should take the opinion of the local people, local resource base, then local knowledge, then only you can able to success. So if you go for this participated rural appraisal, so if you go for a rural area, if you're doing a survey, so the people of that rural area, they can say, tell you that where is your school, where is your health center, where is your fuel, where is your oil, so everything, and what is their challenges. So basically motive with that, rural people will participate. Okay, so many dimensions are there. So I am not going for this. So basically they will, that we call as a bottom-up approach. So they will tell everything, okay, their problem, their concern, their solutions, and they, from that, you have to take an action on that for their development. Okay, so there are different tools are there. Okay, so if you go for, these are the different methods are there. So I am not going for detail on this, that social mapping, resource mapping, institutional programs, so seasonal diagram, different analysis are there. So through it, now most of the cases you can also collect the data that we call as a participatory rural appraisal. Okay, so another dimension that we call as a rapid rural appraisal. In rapid rural appraisal, basically, in in a rapid rural appraisal, basically you want to know a background of a little bit information of a village. Okay, village condition, village pattern, community. So if you enter rapid means quickly you enter to the village from the first to end. So you just elaborate that situation. That we call as the rapid word appraisal, which provide a general idea to understand the village pattern, village situations, village conditions. That we call, this is not successful. So most of the cases, so a brief idea you will get from the that we call as RRA, rapid rural appraisal. But most of the cases that we are using this participated rural appraisal. Okay, similarly, so you just look at it, many points, resource mapping, they will tell, okay, if you do for this mapping in case, and calendar, which potato, onion, which month available, all these things there. Now, this is very, very essential that most of the researchers that at least you should know about that SWOT analysis. That we call as any program you are conducting, so you have to explain their strengths, their weakness, their opportunity, their threat. Okay, so now this is the important tool through which we can analyze the achievement of a program, and you can identify what is the limitations and what are the challenges through which you can eradicate on that. Okay, so many dimensions are there, so that we call as a participated rural appraisal and rapid rural appraisal. Another we have already explained, no need of. Another one is, remember, when you say case study, so the marketing research, basically a case, maybe a individual, maybe a organization, maybe a community, and if you are doing, so if you go for the basic, just look at it. So maybe in case study you have intensive, and if you go for compare with survey, it is extensive. And if you go for case study, you will find depth understanding of a particular community, particular organization, anything you are doing on. Okay, so you are on only one dimension, you are covering single emotion. Okay, so you will find, so you have to use both qualitative and quantitative, and similarly you have in survey you are using both you are using quantitative information. So many dimensions are there, so I am not going for this, through which you will also you do. This is very, very essential, then I will stop. Okay, so if you go for, remember one thing, so you will find that most of the researcher, if you are going to the field, your first step is that you have to maintain a field diary. Most of the researchers forget about that. Remember one thing, this will provide many information when you are entering data. Remember, I share my experience, so many things. So if when you are going to the field, on you meant categorically, you write down, okay, today date and the morning, I left at 9 o'clock, from the 6 o'clock in the evening, you provide detailed information, whom you talk, what type of information you collect, broad idea, each day activity you have to mention in your field diary, and that will provide. Okay, so you just look at the slide. Okay, so each visit, time, place of visit, dimensions, number of people, what type of information you collect, so all types of information, if you are maintaining field diary, then this will provide a great understanding to write your thesis, to analyze your thesis, and many dimensions you can explore from this thesis. So remember, my request to everyone that at least you should cover this dimension. Okay, so this is very, very essential that when you are going for your field diary. So most of the students avoid it, but my request to everyone, if you are going to field diary, so you have to mention this data. So this is the broadly, so you find that broadly, so these are the through which you are collecting your primary data. Okay, so this only I will take 5 minutes, then I will stop here. So you just look at it. And another one is the experiment. So basically the psychology people, now you have given a training program. After this training program, whether one group is there, one training is given, another group is training is not given. So there is a experiment is going on. If the training has some impact or not, whether there is a achievement on that. So suppose I am giving on the research methodology training program. So those who are participating, those who are not participating, are they getting any benefit on that? Okay, so basically, so if you go for, this is the experiment, not in this laboratory experiment. So basically controlling some controlling variables you are doing and doing experiment through which that also you can collect this experimenter. So you have to so explain these dimensions on this issue when you are talking about this experiment. So these are the tools through which you can generate the primary data. Okay, now, so the only 5 minutes I will take one thing. So if you are going to field, okay, so what you have to, first of all, you have to select, okay, what these steps, remember one thing, when you are entering to a village, okay, so you have to remember one thing. This is the very, very important. Remember one thing. When you are entering to a field, the first step, I many times I ask my participants that whom you will talk. Remember one thing, when you are entering a rural area, so the first step you should not ask, they telling that we will ask Gram Pradhan. No, not at all. This is my understanding. So you ask first the school teacher. Remember one thing, when you are entering a rural area, so first you have to ask who is the primary school teacher. Everywhere you will find teacher. So first of all, you have to approach school teacher. Then if school teacher, then second, if that is, then you also the senior most. Okay, in that old age persons are there, you have to talk to these people. Okay, then if possible, then you talk to this particularly, so those who are social worker in that area, maybe grassroots level NGOs are there, so you talk to these people. Then the last stage, if not there, so you talk to the Gram Pradhan there. Otherwise, if you go for the Gram Pradhan directly, maybe they will mislead your information. You will not able to understand the ground reality. Okay, so this is my own experience working in this particularly in the rural area. So now the first step is that when you are going for the field survey, so the first step of your work that you select a field site. I have already explained in the tomorrow class. So you have to first. So nowadays, remember one thing. So you select Kandhamal district. Okay. So it is your duty that you have to, before going to the field, what are the grassroots level NGOs or the organization working in that area. Okay, who are the key person in that area? It is you have to identify there. You have to visit there and you have to collect their information, their mobile number, their email ID. Okay, the first step that you have to care. And most of the cases that ethical issue nowadays, if you want to, particularly if you want to Lodha, Mankaria, that we call as PVTG area, if you want to go, so you have to take in permission from the district collector. Okay, so whether you have to take permission, so I want to go to the particular Musar community. I want to community on Juang community. So you have to take the permission from the authority to go for the field work. So the first when you are doing for, I'm talking about the field stage you are collecting, so you have to go for your field site. Then you have to just look at it. So all types of you have to establish the connection. Okay, you have to link the local level NGO, know the people, know the organization. Okay, so from the secondary you have to. So you have to all these things. Then the third things that you have to your role, observe and make friends from that particular community, and then participate with them, talk to them, develop your rapport with that community. Okay, so when you are going to the field, then remember one thing: always what and the collective. Okay, so you should not all types of what they are observe their activity, their event, their ordinary, all types of, you as a researcher, you have to be careful on that dimension. Okay, so then from that, so you just try to write whatever you observe, you try to note on that observations. and then you have to whatever the information you want to collect. So what type of data you want to collect, what type of theoretical knowledge you have through which you want to generate more hypothesis. So all types of different activity you have to. So now it is your duty after your, so whatever information you have, so when you are staying with this, what is the theory that your mind, so how you link with that theory in the ground. Okay, so you all types of things that you have to keep in mind. Then you just look at the three steps that you have to, whether you are doing interview, whether you are doing personal interview, whether you are doing focus group discussion, all types of, and you with this politeness. And remember one thing, my own experience, that you always remember one thing, that whenever you are going to the field, so just read this slide, but never say that I will give this amount, these things, that things, never think. You clearly tell, I am a researcher, I want here to understand the situations. Maybe, so I will not provide many times researcher, okay, we are doing the survey and government will provide that type of benefit. Please don't tell like this. Because of this you may be ran away, but the other researcher will go to that area, they are facing lots of problems. So my request is that you clearly tell that I am doing researcher. It is not possible that I will can give you anything, but whatever possible, your fact findings, maybe I will establish through the thesis in the policy decisions. That much you can tell to your to the all the respondents. Never tell lie to them. Okay, many times many people are telling lie to them. Okay, so you have to maintain, and also the ethics factor I have already expressed in the yesterday class. So you have to be very careful on that. Okay, so you and also when you are going to the field, you have to all the equipment. You take the stationery, you take the camera, you take the audio recording, you take the questionnaire, you take the map. So every information that before you are going to the field, you have to very clear on this. This is the generally, I think that you have to very careful when you are going to the field, and you always try to listen to the people. Never give your views, your argument, your logic to these people. Try to collect as much as information from them. Never debate with them, never fight with them, never argue with them. So whatever your objective is, that you have to listen, you have to politely handle the situations. Okay, you as a researcher, you understand the situations. Okay, so these are the things. So many other points are there that you have to be careful on that. Okay, so this is the things that you have to understand when you are doing a field preparation to go to the field. Okay, so I think I should stop here. Then if you have many other points are there, so if you have any clarification, you ask me, so I will discuss for some time.
Thank you, sir. Mahesh, this side.
Yes, my dear.
Yes. So, sir, I will take a minute to just request all the participants that I have just given a link of feedback. So please fill your feedback form to enable us to issue attendance certificates, because many people have asked for certificates. So it will be issued, but only the precondition is that you need to fill a feedback form for that. So I will, sir, if you can just take your PPT off, then I will be able to show, because our
Yeah. I'm
friends, our friends from the YouTube are not able to view this message, which I wish to flash. Page is available.
Yes.
So those who are who have joined from YouTube, please note the YouTube link for this feedback form, and Hello, Madam Lavin, there, please. Hello.
Yes, Mahji.
Yes, madam. So I think before I collect the queries of our participants, so if you can just put some perspective words to the all attendees.
I hope participants have benefited from the sessions which we had yesterday as well as today. And Dr. Behra has handled most of the queries which the participants parked in the chat box. And if we still have queries, we will request Dr. Behra to address them. Maheshi, you can take up query one by one.
I'm just collecting them from this chat box and the mailbox. Then I will take a moment to just put
Yes,
them
yes,
to
yes,
serve.
yes.
And let me go to the, I will go virtually the reverse order so as to good, grateful, this.
And students are
Actually, I
repeatedly
have collected all the.
asking for e-certificates, and I have assured you right in the beginning itself that all the participants will get a certificate, as well as we will share the PPTs with all the participants. So there is no need to worry on that account. And the contents will be available on YouTube as well. So anybody can view them, and anybody can listen to them as per their requirements.
And madam, this YouTube, that feedback link for our YouTube fellows is on displayed on the screen. So they are requested to kindly note it down to enable them to fill, because they are not able to view our chat box here in this live
Yes,
session.
yes.
So that is the requirement. I think question is, the most of the people are worried only about this attendance certificates. In the chat box there are the, I think the people who are available in the live session, they can ask queries directly to sir. To they should unmute themselves and put their questions across to the professor. And please, one by one, those who wish to raise the queries.
Yes,
So
participants,
before any,
if you have any query, please unmute yourself and share your query, and sir will address it. And if you do not have any query to raise, Maheshji, you can propose a formal vote of thanks. If
Sir,
you don't,
I think there is one or two queries in chat box.
okay.
So, sir, if you permit, I will.
I am giving the answer of is yeah, the most of.
Yes, yes, sir. There is a question by Sugandha Yadav. She asked, what are the mandatory parameters we should remember in selecting sample size?
That is, yeah, I have already explained. You see, I say that in that context, that you have to, first of all, you have to decide that whether you have, whether the population is heterogeneous or homogeneous, and what type of statistical tool you are using, or whether what type of error you are permitting. Okay, and you have to, what type of sampling you are using. So many points in this slide that I have explained, so you have to take care of that. Okay, some students have mentioned here in that, yes, I will share the PPT. So that is not the issue. Issue is that my request to everyone. So one question is there that, yeah, ethics, if you go for someone has written regarding how you handle that. Okay, remember one thing, whatever field information you are collecting, you clearly mention beforehand information I am collecting, so I will use for my research work only. I will not make it public domain. Okay, so all, and also you try to avoid his or her name. Okay, you just change, if your suppose is analysis, if you are writing the, suppose someone is telling something, you change the name of that person. Okay, you mention that if you want to avoid any personal things that you want to share. Most of the research, my request to everyone that at least be careful on that point when you are doing for this on the issue of ethics. Okay.
So, sir, there is a one question from email. There is no name mentioned, but it's a very basic question. It says that what is the importance of research methodology in research?
Without you see, I have already explained same thing. You see, if you know, first of all, if you know, basically that methodology will provide you a step how will proceed to find out solution to a problem. If your methodology is wrong, your whole objective, your whole analysis will be wrong. So my request is that you should be clear each term that I have explained yesterday, also today, to the methodology play a significant role to find out the answer to your problem. So you have to, all researcher, you should be clear on that dimension. Without that, it is not possible for to proceed to conduct to find out the solution to a problem.
So there is another query in chat box, sir. It is by Tulip Kumar Saha. He asks that in which process of probability sampling a researcher able to minimize errors in quantitative research?
Yeah, I have already explained this question. So if you see, so what type you as a researcher, so in terms of methodology, the sampling selections in probability sampling, okay. So if whether you are able to fulfill your objective, first you have to taken care of. Well, if you are taking this method, so in what extent their justification for selecting that method. Okay, so every information that you have to provide in case of and also error. So you are talking about the error. In terms of error, you will find in both the cases, whether it is sensors or sampling, many errors are there. In terms of tools, technique you are using, methodology you are using, so it is case of sampling. But sensors like suppose respondent error, respondent is not providing. So in that context, suppose I say, I provide the information, my income is 2,000, but you write down 20,000. So you are the researcher, when you will return back to your home, so after collecting the information, you have to cross check whether that information is mistake or not. Suppose I say, I do not provide my caste. Okay, so you have to, you as the researcher, so you have to take care of that. Similarly, you have to provide the training to the each maybe 5 days, 6 days training program to the field investigator before you collecting the information. And you have to clarify every term of that you are doing for the survey. So these many things that you have to take care of that.
So I think there is a last question, sir. It is by Sanjeevani Jina. She writes, what is the difference between stratified sampling and quota sampling?
I have already explained, yeah. So you see, in stratified sampling, you see this is a stratified sampling and a quota sampling. For some extent, they are comes under probability on the division. Like in quota, you are dividing male, female, and you are providing children. So after that, so in stratified, so each strata you are selecting the sample. But in case of quota sampling, now the investigator has choice, so he has to survey for 30 women, 60 male, and 10 children. Now he has the choice. So that is what criteria. Now he become whom he will select or whom he will not select. That is his choice on that.
Hello, may I have a doubt? May I clear my doubt, please?
Yes.
Yes,
Hello.
Please.
Sir, namaste to you all. Namaste to you all, sir. My doubt is that while writing the reporting, can we add the both research questions and research objective Can you add
Yeah,
both, or we can only write objective only?
generally you see that is your choice. Remember one thing: when if there is some basic difference are there in the research questions, you are giving the research question in question format, and your objective in the basic format. Okay, if suppose your research questions and your research objective is different, you can write both. That is not hard and fast rule. And but my suggestion is that if you are giving, you just write down this objective. That's all. You proceed.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Another question here. Yes, so add research objective gone. How? So second that I have already explained. You see, so suppose you have to decide. Suppose if you are taking data from the RBI, if you are data taking from the NSSO, okay, if you are taking from the, so you are the researcher, you have to suppose the authenticity of the data. So you have to, when you are using for your research work, so you have to be careful on that every aspect. Okay, maybe when the data, the methodology is wrong, so you have to decide whether I will choose or not. Okay, so for many points that I have already explained, these 4 5 points that I have explained that you have to taken care of when you are using the second data. Maybe the data is not relevant for you. You cannot compare the data because their methodology is different from your methodology. Okay, so you have to all the dimensions that I have already explained. So you have to be careful on that. How interval done? Okay. Then another mail ID is yes. How will research ethics when you are doing gone? I have science subject from them. So good enough. So, okay, so word limit if you go for like you see, you can proceed. So maximum 3,000 to 4,000 word is sufficient. Or generally to cover all these things. So you can go for 3,000 to 4,000. That is not. You should not write much. Okay, you have to be specific on that. Okay, so when you are lighting the word limit Anamika. Okay, so I think that you just follow for the 3,000 to 4,000. That is sufficient. Okay, so I think so. Those who have all the other questions, yes, very okay. Okay. Okay, so I think if you have any questions, then you ask me. Otherwise, either write to I or you in writing research paper. Okay, remember one thing. Always don't you I don't use I and we. You avoid both. You can use. There is no hard and fast rule that you cannot use. For the synopsis, you can write. And then another question is, we have quantity research when research writing his work, so how he can more scientific interpretation. That you see always, if you are writing qualitative information, okay, so it is nowadays. Remember one thing: there is a clock, there is a method that we call as a triangulation method, which is a mix of qualitative and quantitative. So this is plays significant role at present context. So my request is that don't hesitate that only you have to use the quantitative research. So you try to explain all these points. If you are using qualitative and quantitative, that will be a good one rather than you are using only quantitative figure. So you as a researcher, it is nowadays people are giving more of case studies, qualitative research, and to supplement the quantitative data. So my request is that to supplement your quantitative data, you have to provide qualitative information. That will be good one. And every information you justify with respect to your objective. Yes, you have to do that. Yeah, we said, yeah.
So I think there may be many more questions with the participants. So because time has its own limit, so I would request each one, if they have any more query, they can mail. I think Professor has already shared his mail yesterday, and it can be reached through mail. And I think if the feedback comes, the library will try to organize such programs in future as well. So, Madam Levin,
Yes. So,
so before I formally put a vote of thanks, so if some more input from your side, Madam.
no, now we can wind up, and if the respondents, participants have any queries to with regard to presentation, then they can send through email, and most of them have given feedback that we should be organizing such workshops, and so their point is well taken. We will try to organize more such workshops, more in number in future, and you can go ahead with a formal vote of thanks now.
Okay, thank you, Madam. So it is my privilege to present formal vote of thanks. So first of all, I am more than thankful to Professor Behra for sparing time and sharing his valuable knowledge and skills with our attendees, who are some of the participants joined this session from across the probably more than 10 people were joined from other countries. This workshop could not be conducted without the able leadership of the librarian, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Dr. Narona Tripathi. So, Madam, I'm on my personal behalf and on the library side, I'm more than thankful to you, Madam, for. And I will request, Madam, to on my personal interaction with the emails and etc. from the participants that please organize this workshop in near future also. So I'm thankful to all my IT support team from CIS, from library, because the crucial input has because their technical input, it was necessary to conduct this session, and they have successfully helped, and I thank them all, Mr. Sanjeev and Madam Ritu Nidhi from CIS, who have been instrumental in this. So I am thankful to one and all from the library people who have cooperated and joined the session. And I will, if there is any mistake, it is from my side, and I beg my pardon for that. So on the other hand, I thank everyone for attending, cooperating the workshop, and I wish everyone a very, very good health and a very happy New Year 2001. And with the hope that we will meet again in such type of workshop. Thank you all. Thanks a lot, and bye for.
Okay, so thank you to all. I think I should give my last word that at least I do not know what extent I am able to fulfill your needs because of the time constraint, but in your future, maybe we will conduct a different seminar or workshop like this. So if you have any clarification, any help, please don't hesitate. You just write. So in future, at least it is you people are, at least if you are getting this benefit, so it is a great achievement for us. So at least I should give this Maheshji, Manorama and other teams for at least organizing such a nice workshop. So I hope we'll continue in future. So see you. Thank you all. So happy New Year again. See you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.